Welcome to our Wyoming Humanities United We Stand event. My name is Emmy DeGrappa. I am your host and executive producer for Wyoming Humanities podcast programs called What's Your Why? Winds of Change. Go to our new website, and I mean new, so go there because it's really nice and exciting, and I want you to learn all about us. And you can learn more about our podcast and all our programs and grants. Our mission is to invite you, our Wyoming communities, to explore the ideas and stories that shape us. And with that, I want to talk about United We Stand. And it's an initiative, and we do just that when we do these programs called Discuss and Construct, because it is based on the idea that through civic and civil conversations, communities can better come together to solve problems and accomplish goals of making Wyoming's communities welcoming and accepting. And right now, with that, we are honored to present New York Times bestselling author, Aiden Thomas. Aiden is a trans, Latinx, New York Times bestselling author of young adult novels. They received an MFA in creative writing from Mills College. Okay, I remember correctly. And they are originally from Oakland, California, and they now make their home in Portland, Oregon. And we are going to start that conversation right now. Welcome, Aiden.
Hello, how's it going?
Oh my gosh, Aiden, I'm so excited to talk to you.
I'm so excited to chat too. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this event for I feel like weeks we've had this established. So I'm excited.
I know, so true. And when I started to introduce you, and I wanted to really focus so our audience understands your pronouns and what they
Yeah.
mean to you and why they're important when we say they and them.
Yeah, so I use they them pronouns and he him pronouns, and it's nice that we're finally kind of harnessing an environment where that's something that is welcomed and enjoyed. It's funny because for me, I really am drawn to they them pronouns because I joke about this with my friends a lot. I feel like I'm a guy in the way that, like, if you see a dog on the street and you're like, oh my gosh, what a good boy. It's like that. It's like more of I'm a boy in a knee jerk reaction, but on my insides, I feel like my gender is much more fluid and expansive than that. So yeah, it's just wonderful.
Oh, that's so interesting. I'm glad to hear explain it because it's something I need to understand. It's fairly new, and I think our audience needs to really understand where that comes from and why it's important to you. So the
Yeah.
other thing that's important to me, and I know it's important to you, um, because I am a Latina, is what is different about using Latinx versus Latino or Latina in your identity?
So for me, it's not about like trying to change language or anything intense like that, but it's about creating a space where people can be themselves and express how they want to be understood. And I think that that's kind of the bigger, what's more important than the actual like syntax and the words that we use. It's to make people feel welcomed and, part of the whole group. Heteronormativity is, and especially just can be so debilitating sometimes when you don't feel like you fit into either of those. And when you don't feel like you fit in, then it makes you feel alone and very much on the outside, which is like what I was experiencing before I transitioned and came out. So it's about creating community and honoring everyone in our community, not just the people that we feel fit into these really like binary boxes.
Okay. So with that, and I think about your book, Cemetery Boys, and I thought, well, first of all, I've been reading it and I love it, and I encourage everybody to read it. And and so, in your view, why, because you talk about that, why is it important? What is representation of Latinx? Why is that important in your book? Why did you bring that forward for people to learn about?
Yeah, so the actual term Latinx, for me, I feel like it has much more to do with my gender expression more than it has to do with the actual language itself, because I use Latine when I'm referring to a wider audience. But for me, the Latinx part is more, it's much more American phrasing, that's for sure. And it just has more to do with my gender identity, and how it fits into also my cultural identity. So for me, Latinx is creating that space for that diversity. And, because Spanish is a gendered language and it's really hard to navigate that as a trans person. And even like, my family learning how to speak to me and like use my name and use my pronouns, it's really tricky when your language is so based in a binary gender, that having, the Latinx and having an option of Latine when people are talking about me, especially my family, it makes you feel welcomed and it makes you feel at home, especially when you're in a space where you feel so vulnerable and like really different from everyone else, that it's a chance to bring people in.
Okay. Just because I think that's super interesting. And I would love to hear how you explained that to your abuela.
Yeah.
Which means grandmother. So just so everybody knows, that means grandmother, your abuela. What did she say? What was her reaction? How does she use that?
I'm very lucky in that my Lita and my Gramps are very forward and they're people who harness community. And so when I started, changing the way I looked, changing my name, changing my pronouns, they were very, especially my Lita, she was the celebration. You know what I mean? She was excited to learn a new part of me, and, getting to know someone better means loving them more deeply. And so she was on board like 100%. And, my Lita, she used to teach ESL and volunteer at the library. So a lot of my love for storytelling is from my grandmother. So yeah, I'm very lucky in that she picked it up on it like very quickly and like would be embarrassed if she like slipped up. And yeah, just a lot of care that goes into it. And it's just wonderful.
Oh my gosh. Well, tell me about Cemetery Boys, this new book, and tell me about your other books too. But first I want to focus on and because it was your first book, right?
Yeah.
And it's a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah.
In adult books. And I think that's super, congratulations, really.
Thank you.
And tell us in a synopsis what that book is about.
Yeah, so Cemetery Boys, I like to call it my ghost story turned rom-com. So it's about, the main character's name is Yadriel, and he is a brujo. He is a trans boy living in this like secret community of brujos, which is like witches basically, in East LA. And according to their traditions, they don't have verbiage, language, or even know how to deal with someone who is trans within this magical community. So when he comes out, it's not that people reject him or that his community or family hate him for being trans or anything like that. It's that they don't understand it. And when you don't understand something, a big thing that can happen is avoidance. And so that's something that kind of is throughout this whole story. But Yaz decides that since his family and his community won't let him have the traditional rites of passage that all brujos do, he and his best friend / cousin, because we all have a best friend who's a cousin, team up and they sneak into the church and hold the coming of age ceremony on their own. And Lady Death, who is their patron, she bestows the ads with the powers of a brujo, and they're so excited. And so he has decided that the way that he can really prove himself as a brujo to his family and to his community is that if he can do the magic of a brujo, if he can like physically show them. And so what that means is the brujos, what they can do is they can summon spirits and release them to the afterlife. And traditionally, women are like the healers of the living. So they decide that they will go and summon the ghost of their cousin Miguel, who passed away under very mysterious circumstances. And they go to summon him, and they accidentally summon the wrong ghost. Who shows up is Julian Diaz, who is like the resident bad boy of their high school. And then the two of them are stuck because Julian is attached to his tether, which Yadriel now has. And they have to work together in order for Yadriel to figure out what happened to his cousin, and for Julian to figure out what happened to him and his friends. And that's the pitch.
Pitch. No, that is so cool. And when I was reading it, there's so many cultural references, and
yes,
there definitely are. And sometimes if you don't grow up in that culture, you might not understand the bruja or the brujo, as you call it. So did you use X in reference to Latinx?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So explain that a little bit. Like, explain the cultural significance of a brujo and a bruja, because that is very real. I think it is anyway.
Yeah.
And then how you turned it into X.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a term that wasn't, because again, we're using Spanish and it's so gendered. I wanted to have a term that I could use that would be more encompassing of what everyone in any given community looks like. And specifically a community that's having a hard time knowing how to deal with someone that's not, fits into their gender that they were assigned at birth. So for me, it was once again taking steps to kind of make space not only in my book for different characters, but also for my readers. And it's so important to be able to, see, whether it's in TV shows, on YouTube, or in books, characters who are like yourself and how they navigate these really tenuous and tricky situations, especially when it comes to family and community. So for me, bringing in Brujex was making room for Yadriel within this system, but also making room for my readers who are going to be picking up this book so that they can, picture themselves in my world, because everyone is welcome in my world.
Well, that's beautiful. I'm glad to hear that. And so has your family read your book?
I will tell you, my sister and my brother-in-law are my biggest fans. My sister is always like, when can I read a draft of whatever you're working on, which is really lovely. And my brother-in-law he's very funny. He will text me out of the blue and being like, I was thinking about your book and I have an idea for you. And he'll just send me these really long texts with these ideas that he has. And I would say about half the time I figure out how to work them into the story. My mom has yet to finish any of my books because she says she starts reading them and then she starts crying. She gets overwhelmed with emotion. But my family has just been so wonderful and supportive, not only of me as a person, but me as a writer. And I feel very lucky. We celebrate. When I was brainstorming for Cemetery Boys, I remember I went over to my sister and brother-in-law's house, and we ordered tacos from the truck down the street, and we were just sitting in the living room, me with my notebooks, making notes of and talking about things that we could have happen in the book, and it was really fun. It was nice to have everybody in on it, and yeah, it was a really wonderful experience.
Well, and that was one of the questions I really wanted to know is, when did you start your love of reading, and what was your journey into creative writing?
Yeah, it's such a funny question because I hated reading when I was a kid. I hated it. It could not hold my attention. I was like, where's the pictures? What are we doing here? So it took a really long time for me to get into reading. I think I started writing first, if I think about it. Because when I was in elementary school, I used to have really bad dreams, and my mom would tell me to write them down, and I had to journal for school. So that's what I would do. It was really horrible, fifth grade handwriting on lined paper. That they were dreams that like kind of turned into stories, but you know, I was in fifth grade, so they weren't very long and not very detailed. Um, and it wasn't until I was in sixth grade and my Lita was desperate to get me to read. Like my mom brought me to the library every week, more than once. During summer, I would basically live there while my parents worked. And I would just kind of like check out a book just to check out a book, just to, because I had to. And they used to be like the Wishbone books because they had the really cute dog dressed up as like Shakespearean or like Sherlock characters, which was really cool. And it was like, I can stare at that for 15 minutes when my mom makes me read for every night. But what the first book that really, really got me was my Lita buying me Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. And that book, oh my God, it like my family up until that point and school, whenever it was like time to talk about books or pick out a book to read, they were always giving me like problem novels that were like pretty sad and intense. And so like me as a kid, I was like, this is a bummer. Like, I don't want to read this. But once I read Howl's Moving Castle, I was like exposed to fantasy, and not only fantasy, but humor, because that is a very funny book. And that suddenly just like opened up the world of fantasy and sci-fi for me. And I think after Howl's Moving Castle, my next big obsession was Animorphs. And I'm still obsessed with Animorphs. I think that's such a wonderful series. And then, so I was a really big reader for a really long time. The way I started like really like writing consistently and a lot was by doing fan fiction. That's really how I learned to write. And that was back when fanfiction.net was a thing. So a long time ago. And yeah, I fell in love with it. Like I would be in class, supposed to be doing classwork, but I was like, you know, writing my fan fiction and stuff like that. And after that, I went to college and I double majored because my family was really concerned when I said that I wanted to be an author. And they were like, what about a job that's kind of easy? So I ended up double majoring in English and psychology. And after I graduated, just like, I was like, psychology, is that good? And they're like, yeah. And then I worked in tech for a couple of years and was basically like editing my stories I was writing. And then I decided that I wanted to go to grad school. So I went and got my MFA in creative writing. But even then I was like, I know I'm not going to be a writer, because everyone was like, well, you know, you're not going to be an author. I'm like, yeah, I know. But I really like to teach writing, and I still really love to teach writing. So I was like, that's kind of my path and that's what I'm doing. But then I graduated and the market is so flooded for teaching creative writing specifically. And you have to have like publishing under your belt. And then I was like, I guess I have to get a book deal. And yeah, that's where it wasn't until I really got that phone call of being like, hey, we would like to buy your book, that I was like, okay, I think I can actually like make a career out of this. And it's been a wild experience ever since.
Oh my gosh, that is truly wild. And what an inspiration also for all the creative writers out there. Like,
yes,
you can do this.
It's true. I was the least, I never suspected this ever happening.
But I love the psychology part. Like, yeah, you have to get that other degree. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So Cemetery Boys was your first one. What's your second one?
Lost in the Neverwoods. And that is my very dark and kind of creepy reimagining of Peter Pan. But it's set in Astoria, Oregon, which is a small coastal town. And it's, set in our current time. And it is about Wendy when she was younger. She and her brothers went missing in the woods behind their house. And 6 months later, Wendy showed back up, but her brothers were never found. And so we kind of time jumped to her turning her 18th birthday. And people in her small town, children in her small town have started to go missing. And everyone's kind of looking at Wendy and wondering if like she and her brothers have anything to do with it. And then all of a sudden she almost hits a boy with her car. And he says that he's Peter Pan, who is a character in stories that she used to tell her brothers, and that he knows where her brothers are. He knows how to get them, but she has to help him find his shadow. So that's the premise for Lost in the Neverwoods.
I love that. And I remember that in Peter Pan about the shadow.
Yeah. I love Peter Pan.
Very cool. Yeah. And then the third book. What is the third book?
So the third book is the Sunbearer Trials, and that's my newest one. The sequel is actually coming out this September, so wildly soon. And the Sunbearer Trials, I pitched it as Mexican Percy Jackson meets the Hunger Game, but also with My Hero Academia, because I love a tournament arc. So it's a lot of the Sunbearer Trials. It is a secondary world fantasy, so it's a world that's inspired by my contemporary relationship with Mexico and my culture. And every 10 years, in order to keep the sun fueled and moving through the sky, and to keep the bad, evil obsidian gods locked up in the stars, they have to do the Sunbearer Trials. And 10 demigods are recruited to compete in the trials. And they go through 5 different trials that they have to complete. And they get ranked. And at the end of the trials, whoever is the highest ranked becomes the sun bearer, and they get to bring light to the sun and to all the cities. But the loser has to be sacrificed in order to fuel the sun. And so the main character is Teo, who is a jade god. So there's the golds and the jades. Golds are more powerful and get to be in charge of more fancy stuff. Jades are kind of looked down upon. He is the son of the goddess of birds. So he has these big, beautiful quetzal wings. And the only golds demigods are ever recruited. But this year, not only is Teo recruited, but another jade named Shio, who is the son of the god of bad luck. So it's almost like the two of them have been chosen to lose. And they have to figure out how to survive the trials and get through it together.
Oh my gosh, what an imagination you have.
Cool. There's so many ideas rolling around in here.
Oh my God. Do you sleep at night? Or
not a lot.
You have right.
My notes app on my phone is out of control. There's so many. When I'm watching movies, I'm always pulling out my phone and being like, oh my God, wait, that gave me an idea. And my friends are always like, oh my God, Aiden, you're gonna get people mad at us.
No, be quiet.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to tell our audience that they can jump onto the Q&A to ask questions. Aiden, I want you to tell everybody how to find you on Instagram, on media channels. I really want people to be able to follow you, learn about when your new books are coming out, and communicate with you there on wherever you like to be.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I have the same handle on, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And it's Aiden Schmaiden. So my first name, and then the second part is SCHMAIDEN. I didn't know that we were supposed to have professional handles when you became an author, and I just used the nickname that my friends call me. So, but yeah, you can find me on social media. I'm on all 4 of them pretty often.
Excellent. So oops, sorry. So I want to allow the audience to ask you some questions, because I think it's really fun. So I have one person that says, I loved the Sunbearer Trials. I work at a middle school and have a middle school book club. Do you have any middle grade books planned?
Oh my God, that is such a great question. And a conversation I actually had with my editor recently. So I haven't sold anything right now. So there's no contracts for a middle grade. But it's something that me and my editor are we're looking at and slowly moving in that direction. I have books coming out through 2026. So if I did do my first middle grade, it would probably be 2027. But yeah, I think middle grade is really fun. And I think my humor would work with it pretty well. I would love to write middle grade. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, that same person said, also, I named my dog Zio because of the book.
I love that. That's so cool. Oh my gosh. You'll have to tag me on social media and show me what your dog looks like.
Exactly. That's such a great thing to do. Okay. And here's, can I ask what happens to the Spanish words or phrases in your work when your books are translated into Spanish? I feel like they are included in your books for particular emphasis and word building, and I was wondering if something different happens in Spanish editions to replicate that emphasis.
You know what's so funny is that I was wondering about this last week. I was talking about translations with one of my author friends, and I actually don't know. I'm curious because you're right. Julian specifically speaking Spanish is a very important thing in this book. And I wonder if they like swapped it out for English, maybe? I don't know. But if you at me on social media, I will go. I have so many international editions like tucked into my office. I will go and I will look and see what they did because that's also something that I've been interested in and just hasn't like pulled the book out to actually look at. But yeah, I'm so enchanted and interested in translated works. A lot of my translated books, my German edition was nominated for the German like National Book YA Book Award, which was incredible. And it's because I have these really, really talented translators. So yeah, I'm very curious about that. I'm going to look that up after this call.
Wow. That's cool. That is so cool. And coming from a big Hispanic family, and that was my mom's first language, and I speak Spanish perfectly, actually. And a lot of times people want translation, and I have to say, not everything translates perfectly. I mean, there are some dichos or sayings in Spanish for just what they are. You can't, they don't make sense in English.
Yeah. So then the translator has to figure out like what to do with that and to, best like support the story. It's just, oh my God, translators are so wildly talented. It's really something to be seen.
Yeah, that's true. So I have another one that says, this might be a spoiler. The Sunbearer Trials and Celestial Monsters is marketed as a duology? Yes. Oh, okay. Is there a chance that it could spin off into other series? The world seems like it could go very far.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool thing about high fantasy. I will say writing high fantasy is super hard. So if I were to do one again, I would make sure that I wrote the whole first draft before selling it, because working on a deadline was really, really hard. But yeah, again, a topic that I was literally just talking about yesterday with one of my friends. I have so many spinoff ideas for the Sunbearer duology. I think I have, if I can run it off the top of my head, 5 different ideas, different stories that I could follow with different characters within that world. I even have an idea for like a time jump brand new character. So I really want to, but not sure when it would be. And I think if I were to pick one of the ideas that I have in my head, it would be about Nia and Auristela going and dealing with a primordial volcano god. So,
wow. Okay. So here's one. Has interacting with your readers, whether through social media or events, influenced your approach to writing?
Absolutely, 100%. These are my stories, yes, but it's like I feel like I share them, and I have a responsibility to my readers and like what they like and like kind of what excites them. You'll see in Celestial Monsters, in the acknowledgements, I have listed out a bunch of readers who made posts online or who made fan art. And then I saw that and I was like, oh my God, yeah, I should totally put that in Celestial Monsters. So if you flip to the back of Celestial Monsters when it comes out, you can literally see just readers who have influenced my craft or who have like influenced how I tell the stories of the Sunbearer trials. So yeah, I use that all the time, including for Cemetery Boys. I'm actually drafting the sequel right now. And I love going onto social media, especially Tumblr, and just like looking at what people are saying. And if there's ever like some gentle fan service that I can do, I love doing that. I love seeing people get excited and finding new things in the text that I can play with.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that gives you energy.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I read the book. I read the entire book before tonight, so it must have been Cemetery Boys, and it is fantastic. I love your humor in it. As a past teen librarian, has there been any controversy with having this on shelves?
Yeah, Ted Cruz knows that I exist, which is wild. Cemetery Boys got banned in a couple of places in Texas, and I think one place in Florida. So, I mean, yeah, book bans are terrible for a number of situations, and it's funny because usually when that topic gets brought up, I'm usually asked like, well, what would you say to the people, that are banning books, your books, but also books like yours? And for me, it's like, I'm not saying anything to those people because they have made up their minds and their decisions have very little to do with logic. So it's not something I can like logic out with people. My focus is always on my readers and the people who are impacted by not having those stories. So it's young folks and it's folks who are trans and queer and who are, marginalized or brown, Black, BIPOC. So my focus is always on those students and figuring out ways that I can help get my stories and stories like mine into the hands of those readers. I do a lot of work with We Need Diverse Books, which is an incredible organization. And we just finished doing, or they rather, not we, I like insert myself because I care about it so much. But they just finished a campaign to put book care packages together for students who are queer, trans, and BIPOC in Oklahoma, which is where the horrible tragedy for Next happened. So it's in their honor. So that's what I'm focused on, is how to support the kids that this is being impacted by.
Okay, I have an interesting one here. That's it says, I have written only nonfiction and would like to attempt fiction. Any advice in making the transition?
Oh my gosh, nonfiction writers are so impressive to me. Like the amount of research and like, you just have to be so smart. But fiction is so much fun. Whenever I'm talking to folks who are kind of just entering writing and they're like, I don't even know how to start, I always recommend Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. It's an incredible text. It's focused on the concept of the 15-point beat sheet 3-act structure. And to like narrow it down to like the base of what it is, basically there's 15 beats that happen in most Western storytelling. And she walks you through what all those beats are and like different exercises that you can use. And she also like has the actual beat sheet for free on her website. So if you just Google Jessica Brody 5th beat sheet, it'll pop right up. And that's what I use to decide if any of my book ideas are actually books. I will pull up a blank beat sheet and I'll start filling out those 15-point beats. And if I can fill all of them out, I have a book. And I also have a path of how to write that book. So yeah, when you're just starting out, especially in fiction, super, super recommend Jessica Brody's content. She has the physical book. She also has web classes that I always take whenever I start a project. She's wonderful and just brilliant. She even has a Save the Cat Writes a Novel that's specifically for writing young adults, if you are interested in writing young adults.
Oh my gosh, that's such excellent advice for people.
It's so good. It's like my Bible. I use it for everything.
Oh my gosh. And that is so needed. I mean, people just don't know where to begin.
Totally.
And so when you were journeying along that path, and like, how did you like cross the bridge to decide I'm going to actually write a book?
It it took a lot because I was so comfortable in writing fan fiction, which again is basically like following a beat sheet because I'm trying to echo something that's already exists, so I'm following the same beats. But yeah, it was very unexpected. Like I was used to writing short stories. I had never written a book until I was in grad school, and my thesis was a first draft of Lost in the Neverwoods, which is now published. So all of the books that I have written have been published just because of how I fell into publishing, which is very late as a writer. So yeah, it's like, yeah, it's I feel very lucky, and I just love storytelling, and storytelling is also a way that I feel like I connect with my ancestors, oral histories. And, I don't have to tell you, Emmy, but, it's such an important thing in our culture and our traditions that it feels like an honor to be able to share those stories and to share my culture with an even wider audience. It's the best.
Oh, I think it is too. And I got such a kick out of the well, you call them the Brew X, but the Brujo is very popular in the
Yeah.
Mexican culture. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. The Leyenda and La Llorona, and
Yes.
I mean, it is. And it's very much a part of the culture about that community.
Yeah.
Was very real to me. I was like thinking,
Yeah.
he's kind of like going back to his childhood. Like I could see you doing that. Like I would
Yeah.
really go there with you.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the humor and a lot of the scenes are like pulled, just completely extracted from my childhood.
Uh-huh.
There's a point where Yadriel needs to make a distraction so Julian can sneak out. And Yadriel goes like, "I don't feel well," and then there's like four like tias in the in the kitchen. They're like, "Oh my god, hold on, the vapor rub. I'll get an egg." And yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, yeah, good for you. I thought that was great. It's like, oh my God, I love this so much. So anyway, I have to say, we have someone here who is so appreciative of you. She's a member of the LGBTQ community, and she says, "Thank you so much for writing these stories. I wish there were more. When I was growing up, I think it's important for everyone to be able to see themselves in books."
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. It's truly such an honor to be able to add to the lexicon of not only queer literature, but also, Mexican literature and, Latina literature. I feel very privileged. And it's a job that I take very seriously. And yeah, it's truly a joy. And oh God, when I was growing up, there were no stories. And I think that was a big reason why I felt like I didn't fit into publishing for a really long time, is because I wasn't seeing stories that had characters like me in it. And so I decided to write one. And it's interesting because when Cemetery Boys was published in 2020, it was the first book about a trans character written by a trans author to ever hit the New York Times bestseller list. And that is wild. It's an honor, but the fact that it was 2020 when this was happening finally it was a little disheartening. And so I've kind of, since I have such a privilege and a large platform, one thing that I do to try to give back and pull people up the ladder with me is I love reading advanced copies of books and then blurbing them. So basically, if you pick up a book and like at the top, there's like a recommended line from like an author. I've done a lot of those and they're all, marginalized stories, and just doing what I can to really diversify the options that young readers have when it comes to picking out a book, and, being able to experience different cultures and different people. It's really great. And Since 2020, we've had 3 other trans authors hit the New York Times bestseller list. So it's all coming together. It's happening.
Good for you. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Aiden. It has been such a blessing and pleasure to talk to you. And I hope we get to meet each other in person.
Yeah. I hope they send me up y'all's way at some point.
Like, send me a plane ticket. I'll be there tomorrow. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, you take care, and thanks for your wisdom and your advice. I loved hearing that, and your journey and your inspiration is really inspiration for everyone.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for hosting me, and thank you for everyone who came and participated. Those were great questions. So thank you.
Good questions. Thank you. Have a good night. Oh, and this
Bye.
is Emily DeGrappa, and this is Wyoming Humanities, and this is United We Stand. So join us and follow us on thinkwhy.org. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we just welcome you to send us your comments and questions even after this webinar. And if you want to get in touch with Aiden, he shared his information with you and he can be found. And we hope that you'll join us again next time for United We Stand, the discuss and construct conversations. Good night.